Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back. It is your host, Cesar Espino. Thank you for being here on another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Jess Chan. Hey, Jess, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you. So before we dive in, I want to give our listeners and viewers a little bit of your background, and then we can definitely get to know you more. So Jess is the founder and CEO of Long Play, a full-service email marketing agency for e-commerce brand in health, wellness, and lifestyle. Through her agency, she's helped generate over $8.5 million in revenue through email for her clients. Previously, she was the chief marketing officer of Best Self Co., a seven-figure e-commerce productivity tools brand. Wow, that's awesome. So before we dive into that, because I think I definitely want to understand how you got to becoming your own boss and having your own company and becoming an entrepreneur. Prior to that, though, I want to know more about you in terms of what were you born and what is your backstory as a kid?
Yeah. So I was born in Toronto, Canada. My parents are actually still living in the house that I grew up in.
Cool.
So very small neighborhood, and honestly just had a fantastic childhood growing up. I think my parents just crushed it at the whole parenting thing.
Yeah.
And they were really great at letting me explore different interests, from sports to music to art to whatever I really wanted to try. So I kind of had the classic childhood of having about a whole graveyard of hobbies and instruments just lying around the house because I got the opportunity to try so many different things and really find my interests and really find what I enjoyed and what I was great at. So childhood was just pretty calm, nothing too crazy there. And then when I went to college, I had a background in actuarial science and economics. So it was very math oriented, spreadsheets, really heading for that corporate life. And eventually I just kind of realized that wasn't really the path that I wanted to go down. I didn't really see myself excelling in that career nor enjoying it. So really had probably a year or so of panic attacks, depression, just like a really tough period trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do next, because I knew the path I was heading down wouldn't make me happy. And overall, that entire period all ended up kind of going in the right direction. And I started as a marketing assistant at Best Self, which is where I learned a lot of my early years of marketing, and then eventually started Long Play, which is my agency now.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. And so, what was that one thing that that was even the driving factor or the indication that the stuff that you were studying was not the path you wanted to take? You know, what was it specifically that said, this is not for me?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest metric for me in terms of whether I'm heading in the right direction is always when I wake up each day, am I really excited for what I'm about to do? Obviously, you're going to have, a day here and there where you got to do what you got to do. But overall in life, I think you should always be excited about what's coming up in the future. And as soon as I stopped feeling that, it was a good indication to me that I can work hard, make a lot of money, get the good career and the good degree. But if I'm not excited, then really what is there to be doing and why am I doing all of this?
Yeah, that definitely. And it's really finding that passion or that drive, right? In terms of your, if you take it back a couple of years back, what are some 3 lessons that you might have learned or throughout that journey, bringing you to this point now?
One of the biggest lessons I learned was really to trust my gut and my intuition. along the way, there's a lot of moves that don't logically make sense. And you can write out the pro con lists and you can ask everyone for advice. But I think deep down at the end of the day, you kind of know what the right move is, especially when it comes to choosing your life path or making big moves. So for example, I remember when I applied for the position at Best Self as a marketing assistant, it was nothing particularly special on paper. It was an okay paying job. It was part-time. It was in a marketing role, and I didn't really have a particular interest in marketing. Like I wasn't actively pursuing a career in that particular field. And it was also remote work, which back in the day, it was kind of sketchy. People were like, oh, it's this internet company with no office.
Yeah.
Why would you want to work there? But I just remember feeling like I've never wanted something so badly in my life, and I couldn't articulate why I felt like that job was it. On paper, it was nothing particularly special, but just gut feeling that I felt like this is the next move that I need to make, and this will open the doors for everything I want to do in the future, even though I didn't quite know what those doors were. And at the end of the day, when I took that job and eventually started full-time as a CMO, I actually had 2 job offers on the table. I had that one and another one for a B2B corporate, more corporate business. They had a board of directors. They had an office in Toronto. The salary was a lot higher, great title, all of that stuff. So it looked a lot shinier. But I decided to go with Best Self. And that was one of those decisions that I really went against what everyone was recommending and what kind of looked better on paper. So really trusting your gut in terms of you really know what's best for you. And at the end of the day, it's your life. So you should always choose the thing that you're most excited for. So that's probably one of the bigger lessons.
Yeah,
The second one.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
and I was gonna say, I like that because a lot of times, one thing that comes to mind with that is that many times we as people tend to find or look for a validation someplace else, and so obviously here the message or the lesson here is that although there, I always say it's good to listen to other people and get their advice, and it's just that it's an advice, it's not a direction for you to take on, and you can utilize what you think you can utilize, and whatever doesn't serve you, you can just discard that. At the end of the day, though, you have to make the decision for you, and following, in this case, your gut or that feeling that you have deep down might be the best thing to do, even if everyone's advising you otherwise, right? And that's one thing that I believe many new entrepreneurs or people tend to struggle, because they feel like, well, I don't know the answers. I'm lost. I'm barely getting into this, right? This other person's telling me to do it this other way. And then they tend to just follow that. And sometimes they might even get an advice from people that don't even know what they're talking about, right? So it
For
makes
sure.
sense.
And I'd love to dive into that topic a little bit more
Yeah.
later on, because I have some hard stories
Okay.
deeper into the entrepreneurship journey with my business last year that revolve right around that. So definitely
Sure.
had some hard lessons to learn.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to the original question, the second lesson I learned was to do the work before you get paid for it, and that's how you're going to get paid for it. So I see a lot of new grads, new entrepreneurs who, you're reading a lot of books and getting a lot of advice around knowing your worth and getting paid what you're worth, and making sure you show your value and all that kind of stuff. But when you're a new grad and when you're pitching a business for the first time, you don't have any worth, quite frankly, and you're still in that phase of needing to prove yourself. So really owning that. When I applied for the job at Best Self, I actually applied for probably a few other marketing assistant positions too, and I ended up getting 2 out of 5, and I only applied for 5 positions. But for each one, I wrote a full 5-page brief on their entire marketing strategy and how I'd approach it and how I'd execute it. It was very specific, down to specific people I would bring onto a podcast or do a web summit with, and particular blog posts. And I wrote out the whole blog post for them, and really doing the research behind their business, a marketing strategy that would work, and pitching it to them. And I know to this day that this is what got me in the door for both of those businesses. Because at the end of the day, it was like I did the work for the business before they even hired me, and really putting yourself into the shoes of the person that you're trying to pitch, whether it's an employer, a client, whatever. It's getting into the idea that, hey, when they're trying to hire you, they're not looking for someone to just do the job, or they're not looking for someone with credentials and who can interview well. They're looking for someone to solve a problem for them. So if you can solve the problem for them before you even get in the door, then that door is going to be wide open by the time you get there. So really consistently going above and beyond what people need from you, and that will open doors for the rest of your life. And you can worry about kind of getting paid what you're worth as you go. But I'm convinced as soon as you do the work before you're getting paid, the money will come when you're ready.
Yeah, and it comes down to you're right. I mean, in terms of that, a lot of times is really bringing. I always talk about it in the terms of added value. What additional value are you bringing to them? Because you're right, a lot of people just focus on what's on my resume. I'm just gonna do the 9 to 5 or whatever the schedule might be, and then just do just enough to not get fired. And then they just do just enough to keep my job, right? Kind of thing, right? Yet, if you want to really excel in any of that stuff, you want to just be able to go above and beyond and create that value, right? By bringing different dynamics into the mix, which is very important for anything, whether you're working for somebody or you're working for yourself.
Yeah, I think most people do the minimum and then they're waiting for permission to get to the next level. And in reality, the approach is do as much as you can now, already execute at the next level. And when you're already doing that, then the doors will open. You don't need permission to work harder at what you're already doing.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, and what is another one, probably another lesson that you might have learned from your journey?
I think it's one of those lessons that I'm glad I learned, but if I had to do it all over again, I would still make the same mistakes. It was it was a fun mistake.
Yeah.
But especially starting my own business, it's easy to live the life of an entrepreneur rather than be one. And when we're online looking at social media and listening to podcasts, it sounds like to be an entrepreneur means to travel, to go to events, to constantly be networking, live that glamorous life, have a personal assistant, maximize your time, all of that stuff. And all of that is important, but making sure you're doing the work first and letting those things happen naturally versus using those as milestones to prove that you've somehow stepped into the entrepreneurship life. So I think for me, I had a few months where I was like, I need to prove myself, and to be an entrepreneur means I'm traveling all the time, but that also meant that I didn't have the mental space or the time and the effort to fully sit down and grind and focus on my team and do all the hard work in establishing the pillars and the foundations of a good business. And when you do that, you end up with a kind of a castle built on sand where everything feels a little bit shaky and everything's getting higher. You're going to more events, you have your PR, you're getting more notice, but at the end of the day, when you go back home, you know that your business is a little bit more shaky than you would like it to be. So really recognizing when those moments happen, and it's time to step back and just say, hey, I'm going to work like a 9 to 5 employee or more for a few months to really do the work that's needed to earn the life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a critical, and you can definitely get lost easily. I can see that happening. You mentioned two things, and I want to tap into that a little bit more. You talked about the having the mental space, and so what does that mean to you, and how critical is that for your journey?
Yeah, mental space is everything for me. Personally, I've struggled with kind of just anxiety and panic attacks in general, and that's kind of like my daily weather. So obviously you have your sunny days and your stormy days, but on average, I'm like, there's just kind of like a little bit of anxiety all the time, and I've learned to accept that and manage it. And overall, it's totally fine. But I think when we're not aware of our mental space, we start pointing to specific issues that we think are like fires that we need to solve and why things are going wrong in our life, when in reality we just don't have enough mental space to like breathe and have the mental space to actually handle the challenges, and we start feeling like the room is closing in and everything is unmanageable and we start feeling overwhelmed. So for me, it's really been a few years of learning to recognize when I'm not getting enough mental space, learn to know when I need to step back and slow down. And I think slowing down is probably one of the hardest things for most entrepreneurs to do, because we only have the gas pedal. We don't really have a brake.
Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of failures, you talked about failures, and you will do those things again. What is your thought process in terms of failures? How do you see that?
The way I see failures is it's only a failure if you kind of know it's a mistake going into it. So, and I think we all have a few of those in our life where you're like, this is a terrible idea, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm satisfying something in my ego, or I'm satisfying like a pleasure need or something like that. So I think when you go into something knowing you're doing it for the wrong reasons, but you justify anyway, those are the things that actually classify as mistakes. Everything else, if you didn't really know any better going into it, and you're better off when you come out of it because you know more, then I don't really classify that as a failure or a mistake in any way. Because there's no way you would have known. So what did you really fail at?
Right.
And you're still better off having done the thing because now you know, and you're not going to make a mistake when there's even more at stake.
Yeah.
So my approach to it is really a lot of self-awareness to really recognize when you're doing things for the wrong reasons and you're just justifying it to yourself.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think part of that is that one thing that I tell people is that at the end of the day, um, every failure that might seem as a failure is really a lesson, or is an educational experience, something that you can learn from and really rectify and fix as you're moving forward, right? So unless you're making the same mistake over and over, then you're getting yourself consciously into that, and you're no better than your past or that past experience, right? So you want to make sure that you can not do the same, especially coming out of something that was teaching you something, right? So let's talk about you diving into being an entrepreneur, because I think that's very hard to transition from a 9 to 5 working for somebody, having that secure paycheck, and then saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take this leap of faith and just go and do this on my own. How was that for you in terms of whether there's any preparation, or how was that experience just transitioning over?
It was one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life. I think it was one of those things that if you told me going into it up front what it would be like, there's a chance I would have wimped out or slowed down the process a little bit. But I kind of dove head in. So I was originally at Best Self, and I was working full time there, and this agency started because I was going to entrepreneurship events, and I would meet other entrepreneurs, and they're kind of asking me what we were doing for email marketing, and I would just kind of explain our strategies to them. And eventually they just asked if they could hire me to do it for them. And I didn't really have an intention to start an agency at the time. And, I was happy at my job. But I'm like, hey, sure, I'll say yes. And like, we'll figure out how this works. So it was a very organic start to a business. Eventually I kind of reached that breaking point where I'm like, there's a lot of potential with this business. I see the vision. And I was also starting to get a little bit stale at my job, not because it wasn't a great company. I absolutely loved the team, and they were like family, and I think the leadership was amazing. It was just kind of, I wanted to grow more, and I felt like I was looking for a new challenge. So originally I had planned to kind of run my business as kind of like a side hustle and stay at my current job for another like year or two. And then within 2 months, it kind of all imploded and I left. So there wasn't really a solidly executed plan or strategy. It just kind of was like, okay, we can't handle all these things, and it all unraveled very quickly. But I'm still glad it happened the way it happened. But that first year was really tough. There was a lot to learn, and you're constantly in survival mode for that first year. So you don't really have the luxury yet of thinking about how we want to grow and team culture and structure and all of these fun things that I love in building a business. It's really around, God, I really hope we don't lose this client, because like if we do, we're not going to make payroll next month. And every client, every email is triggering because you're constantly living in fear. At least I was, especially because I have a little bit more anxiety, I think, than the average person. But that first year was really tough because you're learning you're making mistakes constantly. Every day feels like a year, and the business is changing every 2 weeks. So the learning curve, which is very, very steep. And I was working with an agency helping me with operations and growth. So we were very, very aggressive, and we were trying to basically double every 2 months. And obviously there's a lot of tension and pressure that comes with that.
Yeah. And so now that you have your business established, what are some of the clients that you serve? In what industry, or is it really any industry?
Yeah, so we only work with B2C e-commerce companies, mainly
Gotcha.
in kind of consumer packaged goods. So we work with a lot of health and wellness companies selling supplements, beauty products, hair care, lifestyle and apparel as well. And in terms of size, our clients range anywhere between $1 million up to 70 million. So pretty broad range size wise.
Got it. And what are some of the specific things that you do for your clients? I see here you do full service email marketing for e-commerce brands. What specific besides that? Is there anything else, or is that the core business that you focus on?
Yeah, that's our core business. So I learned early on, it's like, just stay focused, stay in your niche, do it right, and then you can always branch out in the future. So we just do full service email marketing for e-commerce businesses. I always started the agency kind of as the agency I wish I could work with when I was a CMO at an e-commerce company. So our real job at the end of the day is just to make founders and entrepreneurs' lives easier by taking this entire channel off of their plate and managing it for them. But we do everything from strategy, copywriting, design, implementation, reporting, optimization. So just literally everything that goes into email marketing.
Wow, that's awesome. And then in terms of, one of the things that I like to ask people in terms of just looking at the entire journey is to do two things. Number one, to define success. So how do you define success for you in your life? And the second thing is, if there was one thing that you can tell people that might be going through a challenging time right now, what would you tell them that they can do to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of defining success, I think I have kind of 3 metrics that all need to work together. The first, like we've talked about, is being excited in every day when you wake up in the morning for kind of what's coming in the future. Second piece is that you're constantly growing and being challenged and pushing yourself. So if you don't feel like an imposter and you don't feel like completely underqualified for what you're doing, then you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah.
And the third piece is relationships and making sure that you're not climbing this mountain alone. One of the biggest definers of when I feel successful is the fact that I get to step into a team and they're all waking up excited each day. The types of clients that I get to work with, I consider my entire team and all of our clients as personal friends, and that's a really important part of that success to me. So that you really have a network as you're growing. In terms of overcoming kind of a tough time, I think I'd have you kind of ask one question first, is really, are you toughing it out for the sake of toughing it out, or is this really what's needed to succeed? I think sometimes we make things more difficult than they need to be because that's what we learn entrepreneurship should be. So we're like, if I'm not struggling and suffering, then it's not great. But I've learned in the last few months that like you can be growing and pushing yourself and doing really hard things, but also in this like very blissful state of peace. Yeah. So one is like, are you struggling just for the sake of struggling? And the second thing is, honestly, sometimes there really is no good answer. I think people say like, it's going to be okay and all this kind of stuff, but I don't know if it is. I don't know if you're going to end up failing or if it's ever going to end and all that kind of stuff, but really it's enjoying the process and realizing that you went into this because you're excited about having uncertainty. You're excited about taking a risk and you're excited about what could come out of it, and realizing why you're doing all of this, and that, you know, the challenges that you're going through are just part of the game. And as long as you get to keep playing the game, then enjoy it. And whether you're going to win or lose at the end, who knows, but just enjoy playing the game.
Yeah. And I think when you have that, when you take that into perspective from that point of view, it's like, if you don't really focus on that negative outcome or even probably positive outcome, and you're going through the journey, you're enjoying that, as you said, it's a game, right? You're enjoying that game and you're playing full out. Eventually, you know, you're gonna get the result that you want. You just gotta continue to keep playing until you get the result that you want, right? Rather than kind of giving up and taking that rejection or that failure or that whatever that might be, saying, well, you know, I guess it was not meant to be, therefore I'm gonna stop playing this game and then just go back to something else. And so I think that when you take it from that perspective, you definitely can push through.
For sure. One of the mindsets I constantly need to remind myself of is realizing that all of this is one big game. Like, we think we're not doing these like amazing, crazy, like new things. We're just all in this game of entrepreneurship, and we're trying to build businesses and all of that. But like, when you're playing basketball, you don't get mad if the other person tries to shoot against you. That's just the game. But yet we go into work thinking like, man, this client is complaining, or my team isn't doing what I need them to do, or running into all these issues. But that's just part of the game, the same way that your opponent trying to shoot on you is part of the game of basketball. So really seeing all those challenges and setbacks and things that you're frustrated about, realizing like this specifically is what you signed up for. You signed up for the challenges because that's what makes it interesting, not for just the fun parts. Because then you would be bored and you'd want to do something else too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to ask you about, because you never know if some of the people that are listening to us or watching us might be going through something similar. You were talking about almost daily, you have this anxiety attacks or, panic attacks. How do you deal with that to get you back into a good state of mind?
Yeah, great question. So like I said, it's kind of like the weather. Like some days I wake up, I'm like, oh, it's sunny. This is gonna be a great day. And then it starts raining midway through the afternoon. I'm like, what are we doing? I thought we were good. So it almost feels like this like total external thing that I'm trying to just kind of calibrate against. The biggest thing I've learned is to really give myself the space. I think in the past I tried to push through it a lot, and I'm like, I have a to-do list today. I need to get through it. It doesn't really matter how I feel. We're just gonna grind. And I've realized that I'm probably 5 times more productive when I am feeling great versus when I'm not. So it actually makes more sense for me now just to say like, hey, if I really need to just take an afternoon off, I will. And I know that the next morning I will get all of that done and more because I'm feeling great. So giving myself the space and the patience. Friends have also been fantastic for that. I'm lucky that I work in a network with a lot of health and wellness people. So a lot of people very familiar with mental health. I have a lot of coaches and things like that to just kind of like talk me through it and just remind me to stay grounded and remind me it's all okay, and just at least have people to talk to about it. So really it's making sure you're kind of managing yourself internally and giving yourself space and patience and grace, but also having your external people and network and support system to be able to talk to about it.
Yeah, and talking about that, you mentioned something, and you said you have coaches. Sometimes people have the idea that as an entrepreneur, you made it. That's it. You know, I know for a fact that that's not the case. I mean, I think that every person, no matter what level of success you have, I believe that the majority of those people have some sort of coach, someone helping them through their journey, either growing their business, either in whether it's personal, mental, whatever the case may be. How critical is that? Because I feel that a lot of people that don't step into that space are missing out on a huge opportunity, right? So how do you see mentorship or coaching in your life?
For sure. Coaches have been such a big part of the journey. I was lucky that I grew up with mentors at every stage, even during childhood, and those mentors kind of came up a little bit more naturally and organically, whether it's teachers or like sports coaches and things like that. So I always kind of used that as a pillar to push me to the next level, and I kind of just translated that into the entrepreneurship journey. So I've had coaches around just fully self-development, where they were kind of talking you through the person that you want to be. So it's less around, just business and numbers and things like that, but really who do you need to grow into for you to be successful at the next stage of your life? So I've had worked with coaches around that. I've worked with business coaches. So I've worked with Austin at Scale 2X, and they were fantastic last year. And they were really focused on business operations, helping you understand the fundamentals of business. And I really just kind of recognized, like, I'm starting a business for the first time. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. So let's speed up this learning process a little bit more by bringing people in and helping me make mistakes faster. So they were fantastic. And then I've also worked with just personal coaches that I still talk to on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. It's just kind of like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm struggling with right now. And it's usually a mix of both personal and professional. But the biggest thing I've learned is it's hard to separate coaching into just business or just personal, because at the end of the day, you are running your business. So any business problems you have are probably problems that you have. So for example, if you have team culture issues, that probably has something to do with how you see teams and how they need to operate. If you have issues with clients, you might have issues with just relationships with people and how to interact in a business setting, things like that. Everyone has their own mental blocks, but if you don't have a coach, definitely recommend you get one for whatever area of business or personal that you're struggling with.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I definitely think that that's a critical part. Just like if you're you want to go back to school and get a degree, eventually you're hiring that teacher to be quote unquote a coach or a mentor. So similar to that, I think it's important to have mentoring and or coaching in different areas. From that perspective. I just have a couple more questions for you before I let you go. Um, the first thing is, if people wanted to reach out to you and get a hold of you, how do they connect with you?
Instagram is probably the best one. So I'm Jess Chan on there. And I think my username is just Jess Chan with 2 J's.
Okay, awesome. And then, do you have any daily habits or rituals besides waking up with uh, waking up and having a purpose for the day? Are there any specific things that you do on a day-to-day basis to just kind of put you in a positive state of mind?
Yeah. Discipline is not my strong suit, so I don't have a steady
Yeah.
daily ritual like most people, but there's a few that I kind of circulate between. Usually I have some sort of like morning playlist that I'll listen through as I'm going for a walk, and they've been ingrained in me where each song kind of just triggers the right mental state that I need to be in going into work. I also just go on very, very long walks. So I'll go on like 2-3 hour long walks to think through problems, and I consider that work just as much as sitting at my desk is.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, any other things before I let you go that you might want to share with our listeners or viewers?
I think mostly just like get excited about where you are in life, whether you're in the great part or some part that you feel like is terrible. Because I know that even when I look back on the hardest points in my life, I'm like, God, I kind of miss that time, because it all looks different looking back when you know it all worked out in the end, and then you're like, oh, that was like a great part of the journey, and somehow we forget that when we're in it, and we forget to step out of it and realize we're gonna look back on this time and be like, hey, this was a great period, even though it sucked, because it all led to great things. So just remembering to keep that perspective in there and keep playing the game.
Yeah, you know what, I really like that, and even if I didn't see it from that perspective. I like the fact that even if you're going through something challenging right now, you're gonna look back. Sometime in the future, you're gonna be looking back, and you're gonna be excited about that. So when you think about it from that perspective, again, it changes everything. And I think anything that we will go through in our life is how we frame and how we see things. And when you change that framing, it can definitely make a big difference. So I really actually enjoyed that. So thank you for sharing that. And once again, thank you for being on the show today. Really appreciate having you here today.
For sure. Thanks, Cesar. Great being here.
Yeah, definitely. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure that you check us out on all platforms. You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Please make sure you comment, share this post, this interview here, and just come out here and give us a comment. Stay tuned for the next episodes at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.